In progress.
Okay, welcome everybody to this city council for September 14th, our regular meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I hear adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Then moving second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Thank you, council. At this time, I've asked Councilmember Farratani to read our proclamation on Puget Sound Starts Here month.
I defer to Councilmember Goldman.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Goldman, thank you.
Whereas Puget Sound and the waterways that connect our mountains to the shore contribute in numerous ways to our Lake Forest Park economic infrastructure, quality of life, and to our unparalleled natural resource base. And whereas water quality is a priority for the health and welfare of citizens in Lake Forest Park. And whereas millions of pounds of toxic pollutants enter Puget Sound every year, most of which are a result of rain washing over hard surfaces contaminated with yard chemicals, pet waste, oils, soaps, and other toxins that then enter storm drains, streams, and ultimately Puget Sound. And whereas educational initiatives such as the regional Puget Sound Starts Here campaign work to protect and improve local regional water quality. And whereas state agencies and more than 400 local organizations, governments, and tribes, including Lake Forest Park, have joined together to engage residents in Puget Sound recovery and who have collectively launched the Puget Sound Starts Here public awareness campaign. And whereas Puget Sound Starts Here month is an opportunity to bring attention and focus to the issue of local and regional water quality and provide educational opportunities for the public to learn how they can help clean up Puget Sound and our local waterways. And whereas the actions Puget Sound's more than 4.5 million residents take today add up to determine the future of our health, economy, culture, and quality of life. Now, therefore, the mayor and city council of the city of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim September 2023 as Puget Sound Starts Here month in the city of Lake Forest Park and urge all citizens to take responsibility for their part in protecting and improving the health of Puget Sound for future generations by participating in local volunteer cleanup or restoration project and adopting at least one sound, healthy behavior to help restore and protect Puget Sound and our local waterways. In witness whereof, signed this 14th day of September 2023, Jeff Johnson, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Golden. Okay, with that, we have citizens' comments. Do we have a list back there, Chief? Or any of the 5 or 6 officers we do? Come on up.
I think I'm first on the list.
Okay, then you go ahead. Let me just state your name.
My name's Nigel Kiefer. I'm a resident of Lake Forest Park. The city proposes to renew ordinance 1227 for the 4th time. Review of the legislative history suggests a lack of guidelines, clarity, and purpose. What has been accomplished to date? Do not renew this ordinance. It is amazing how the mayor and council willy-nilly approve legislation without a detailed plan and cost benefit analysis. Remember Proposition 1? It is embarrassing. So if there's a problem, throw money at it and bureaucracy with that. The socialist commissars in the State House and Senate believe the homeless crisis is a housing problem, and in their wisdom concocted House Bill 1220. The sanctuary of the city of Seattle and King County policies have exacerbated the numbers of homeless and drug-addicted individuals in the state. Their solution is the unelected King County Regional Homeless Authority. Via an interlocal agreement, they have committed to providing $73 and $55 million, respectively. Not mentioned in the ordinance is the city's token, $16,344 per year. While some of the homeless are the result of government policy, spending excesses and taxes, for most, I submit that the problem is not one of housing, but drugs. China and the cartels enrich themselves over the fentanyl deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. There is an invasion at the southern border, instigated by the Biden administration, China, drug cartels, and assisted by useful idiot NGOs. Local government sanctuaries are their magnet. It's a money-making business, but we, the taxpayers, get stuck with a bill. Enough is enough. It is time to wipe away your liberal tears. Stop placating sanctuaries. Stop pandering to the homeless industrial complex and provide some tough love to those suffering from the drug problem. House Bill 1220 and Lake Forest Parks Ordinance 1227 are not a viable solution to the problem.
Thank you. The next three people are actually our next guest to speak, so you didn't really have to sign up. We'll let you speak anyway. So before we move on to them, is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak? Okay, Matt, is there anybody online that would like to speak?
If you would like to address the council, please use the raise hand function. Doesn't look like it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, this time we'll close citizens' comment and move on to our next first presentation. You guys got to wait a few minutes though. Hold on a second. So I'm gonna bring the chief up for actually and Judge Grant for a pretty exciting thing. We haven't done this for a little while, so.
I am super excited, council and community, because we haven't done this in a long time. And the last few officers that have been hired or retired, it's all been, through the pandemic, and it's online or it's nobody's here. So I'm super excited to announce that we're going to hire 2 lateral officers, or we have. And so I'm going to bring up Officer Hubermann or Franciso Montague and Officer Hubermann Alcean. If you want to come on up here. You can just stand right there, and then I'm going to read a couple of bios and let you all know a little bit about these folks. Officer Franciso Montague, commonly known as Frankie, has dedicated his 6 years serving as a police officer. His journey towards law enforcement began when he was enrolled in a Police Explorer program at a young age, fueling his passion for this career. A proud graduate of O'Day High School in downtown Seattle, Officer Montague hails from the state of Washington. Following his high school graduation, he pursued higher education and earned a bachelor's degree from the UW in Society, Ethics, and Human Behavior. Prior to law enforcement, Officer Montague spent 6 years at Costco, where he held roles as a security coordinator, loss prevention fraud analyst within the e-commerce department. Officer Montague started his law enforcement journey by attending the basic law enforcement academy with the Kirkland Police Department, and subsequently he made a lateral move to Briar Police Department. Throughout his career, law enforcement career, Officer Montague has taken various roles, including serving as a patrol officer, firearms instructor, less lethal launcher instructor, bowler wrap instructor, lead field training officer, and the department's registered sex offender program. His dedication and commitment to his profession have earned Officer Montague a life-saving medal, commendations from external agencies, and most recently a meritorious conduct award highlighting his exemplary work ethic at his previous police department. Beyond his professional life, Officer Montague finds solace and enjoyment in spending time in the gym, listening to country music, embracing the outdoors, and cherishing moments with his close friends and family. Officer Montague is deeply honored, enthusiastic, and grateful to be part of the Lake Forest Park Police Department. His aspirations is to become reassuring presence within the community, one that the citizens can rely on many years to come, always sporting a warm and welcoming smile. And Officer Hubermann Alcean hails from the small town in Haiti, where he spent his formative years. His educational journey led him to earn an associate degree in French communication, and he embarked on a career teaching French at the college level. Hubermann then decided to become an accountant. Why an accountant? Well, his grandmother would help him dress to go to church, and one day she said to him, "You look like an accountant." So she was very proud when he started accounting school. A seismic shift in his life occurred on January 12, 2010, when the catastrophic earthquake that ravaged Haiti, measuring a magnitude of 7.0. In the aftermath, Hubermann found himself without work or school. He made the choice to volunteer at a remote medical clinic as a medical translator, supporting the efforts to treat the injured. The medical team he joined comprised dedicated volunteers from the US, including doctors, nurses, paramedics, and firefighters. During this service, he crossed paths with a group of paramedics and firefighters from Washington State, part of the nonprofit organization Impact Northwest, which specialized in advanced search and rescue. Together, they played a pivotal role in establishing Haiti's first aid program, with Hubermann becoming one of the first emergency medical technicians to graduate. He assumed the role coordinating and instructing numerous first aid classes and managing volunteers, facilitating logistics, and setting up mobile clinics across the country. Hubermann's commitment extended to collaborating with multiple NGOs, including World Concern, Medical Team International, and the American Friendship Federation, to raise relief funds for Haiti. His contributions included the construction of a women's maternity center and school in the Port-au-Prince neighborhood of Site Soleil, if I said that right. Hubermann and his wife Julie, Hubermann met his wife Julie in Haiti and relocated to Washington State. They have been blessed with 5 children and first granddaughter. Upon settling in Washington, Hubermann diversified his skills, becoming a certified nursing assistant, certified medical assistant, a phlebotomist, and emergency room technician. And he also serves in the Army National Guard as a military police officer. He has played an integral role in developing and training programs and teaching first aid to fellow soldiers, earning 2 Army Achievement Medals and the Washington State Achievement Medal. The catalyst for Hubermann's journey into law enforcement traces back to his childhood in Haiti, when a police officer named Daniel left an indelible mark on his young heart. He would invite Hubermann and other community members to sit in the back of his patrol pickup truck, activating the lights and sirens as he drove around the neighborhood. This simple act of kindness and respect ignited Hubermann's desire to follow in Officer Daniel's footsteps, embodying professionalism, respect, dignity, humility, and compassion. And although Hubermann has explored various professions, his true profession was to become a police officer. He started his law enforcement career with Renton Police Department, and Hubermann is honored and thrilled to join Lake Forest Park Police Department, where his endeavors to serve the community. And in addition to his dedication to public service, he also enjoys playing soccer in his free time. So this is your 2 new officers that are laterals that came over. My prior chief said one of the best things you can ever do is when you offer somebody a job. And if you've ever been in that role, it's so exciting because the excitement that you hear in people's voices of getting that job. So this has been a great pleasure to get to do this with the family and the community here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the judge come up and we're going to do some swearing in. So if you guys want to stand here, please.
All right. I am delighted to get to swear you in. Right. Officer Hubermann, you raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Hubermann Alcean, having been duly appointed as police officer for the city of Lake Forest Park, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office as prescribed by law, and to the best of my ability, that I will support and maintain the ordinances of the city of Lake Forest Park and the laws and constitution of the state of Washington and the United States of America. Excellent. All right, Officer Montague, raise your right hand. I, Franciso Montague, having been duly appointed as police officer for the city of Lake Forest Park, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office as prescribed by law, and to the best of my ability, that I will support and maintain the ordinances of the city of Lake Forest Park, the ordinances of the city of Lake Forest Park, and the laws and constitution of the state of Washington and the United States of America. Excellent.
So these gentlemen do not have their uniforms just yet because they're pretty fresh. So normally what we'd have is uniforms and we'd pin some badges on. So we're just gonna issue out these temporary badges until the new ones come and their ID cards. So this is your ID card and badge. You probably want to get a picture and so just come on over here. Actually, let me get a picture. Frank, if you want to go right up here with the council and get a shot of
I stand
I
up.
think we should come down.
We'll stand up.
We're too wide.
Yeah, are we too wide? Get in.
Yeah.
I think. Stand here.
Stand up back there.
Or Tracy. Wait till we all get in there.
Yes, that works.
I don't like you got a big project.
You may smile on back.
I'm laughing my head off. Okay, family, want to get some
Family.
pictures?
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Chief. Real quick, I'd just like to say thank you and welcome to the family, and I mean family. We take our officers very seriously and you're what make our city run. I do have one question. For a grandfather, you look pretty young. He's not paying attention, but I just became a grandfather and I don't look as young as you. I'm a little concerned. So, but thank you very, very much. We appreciate you taking on the job. We'll give them a couple seconds.
Medical.
Okay. With that, we'll be moving on and thanks again. Thanks, Chief. Okay, at this time, we're gonna have another presentation by the Connections Health Solutions. I'm gonna just be kind of informal because I have all three names here and only two on here, so I'm just gonna introduce Sarah, Heather, and Ryan. Welcome.
Good evening. Listen,
Yeah.
do you have the presentation? Thank you. So while we're getting that pulled up, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Lopez and I'm the Vice President of Implementation for Connections Health Solutions.
And good evening, and thank you for the time this evening. My name is Heather Genovese. I'm the National Vice President for Clinical Operations with Connections Health Solutions.
And what we have for you this evening is we will start with who Connections is, our clinical model. And then we will talk a little bit about the Kirkland facility and what that looks like. And Ryan will show you all some pictures. Okay.
How was your weekend?
It was great. Well, I'll start in the interest of time. So Connections Health Solutions is an Arizona-based company. We are backed by SAMHSA and we are recognized as an industry best practice in crisis care. And so we have the honor and the ability to come to Washington and we will be opening up a facility in Kirkland. That facility will be opening up in mid-2024. Our model offers an array of services and a continuum of care, if you will, starting with on the one side of the continuum, a urgent care, which is a walk-in facility, similar to how you and I would go to a urgent care facility for medical reasons, same exact kind of concept, but for behavioral health needs and issues as well. Let's say, for example, that individual is looking. There we go. All right. All right. So before we jump into the model, we'll give you a little bit more history of who Connections is, and then we'll jump into the model.
So Connections Health Solutions was founded in 2009 by Doctors Chris Carson and Dr. Robert Williamson. They were emergency psychiatrists in the Dallas area. They were then brought to Arizona to assist us in our crisis issues around our state. They were able to design and implement the model that we're going to talk about this evening, which has then, as Sarah's mentioned, become a national best practice for how to deliver psychiatric crisis care to a community. So right now, when someone is in crisis, they're going to call 911 or now 988, which is a wonderful tool that we now have a dedicated line for individuals to call when they have a psychiatric crisis. Over those crisis lines, about 80% of the calls are resolved and no one else needs to make contact or do anything. Caller comes in, they talk them through it, and the crisis is resolved. There are, of that 20% that's left, mobile crisis may in fact need to be called out to meet with the individual and the family and the surroundings. About 70% of the time, those individuals, everything's copacetic and they can leave and the person is fine and safe in their community. Of the remaining 30% of that, folks are going to need to have they're going to have care in a facility with a psychiatrist, nursing, and the rest of the discipline. That is what we provide. And of that remaining 30% that mobile crisis is not able to stabilize, 60 to 70% of the people that come into our facilities are able to be discharged and sent back into their community. And they have no further need of our services at that time. So this, and actually, just to make a really clear point, the reason this is a wonderful thing is it really reduces the stress and the pressure on the emergency rooms where folks are being taken now. That is not what their skill set is. They're phenomenal in medical care. Psychiatric care is quite different. And it also reduces the stress and pressure on law enforcement in the community. They're police officers, they're not psychiatrists. So they're going to have some place to bring an individual who can receive appropriate care at the appropriate time and then be able to move forward.
So 4 of our key values that just make us who we are is, number 1, we prioritize access for all. So we have an idea that there is no wrong door. Anyone that comes to our facility, we are able to provide care for, and we are able to see them very quickly and deliver treatment in a very fast, efficient manner. We believe in least restrictive care. So 65 to 70% of our patients are stabilized and discharged within the 24 hours that they come to our center. There are that 30% of patients, those individuals remain in an inpatient setting, if you will, for approximately 3 to 4 days on average. We create connections in community. And so, as kind of cliche as it sounds, that is our name. We have spent quite a bit of time learning the area, the Washington, trying to create those connections with the providers, the hospital systems, first responders, the local communities, et cetera, because we want to be a part of the continuum and a part of the community. And then we deliver real results and real impact. So again, we're backed by SAMHSA, and we are a national best practice of care. So as I was starting to get into our 4 kind of programs, if you will, if you look on the very top of that continuum, we offer what we call urgent care. And as I mentioned before, this is very similar to a medical model urgent care, where you and I would walk into an urgent care facility for something that's maybe a little bit more serious, but not necessarily an emergency. We would walk in, we would see a nurse practitioner, a medical professional, et cetera. Same concept, but for behavioral health issues and treatment. Let's say somebody is a little bit more acute than that. So maybe they're expressing suicide ideation, they are going to hurt themselves or others, et cetera. We have what's called a 23-hour observation. This is a level of care where someone could come in, stay at our facility, receive treatment from a multidisciplinary team, become stabilized, and then once they are stable, to be released back into the community in less than 24 hours. We recognize that always isn't everyone, and there are times where individuals are going to need to stay with us a little bit longer. And so if you move farther down the continuum, there is the service crisis stabilization. We will have 2 16-bed units at our facility to be able to meet the needs of those individuals that do need to stay with us a little bit longer. And then on the far side, or the far end of that continuum, we will offer a service called Transitions. And that really is a level of care that helps to bridge those appointments once they are discharged from our facility before they can get reestablished back with their community provider. We're continuing to provide services and support so there isn't any gaps in care.
Okay, so our standard crisis stabilization unit, that is our inpatient. 16 beds. We keep it at a 16 bed. It's a milieu that's easily managed. These are folks who have high acuity behavioral health crisis services. So they're going to have an assessment by a psychiatrist. They'll have a nursing assessment done by a nurse. Our case management team is going to meet with them, and they're going to talk through and identify any social determinants of health needs that they may have. And then we're going to provide immediate crisis intervention, meaning we're going to start them on medication if that's indicated. We're going to get them calm in a safe environment, and we're going to provide what they need: medication, food, showers, the whole thing. And those are folks that can come in and they stay 3 to 5 days. So we can go to the next one. So we also have our back door, which is our drop off for law enforcement and first responders. That is a dedicated area that only first responders and law enforcement will be utilizing. When they ring the doorbell, our staff, they have a multidisciplinary staff that will come. It'll be a doc, it'll be a nurse, case management, tech, and our peer support specialists. We will be able to take custody, and we currently take custody in Phoenix and in Tucson of individuals in under 5 minutes, thereby allowing the officers to be able to go back out into the community and protect the community. Individuals will be seen by a provider and have an assessment completed within about 90 minutes. Again, we have a 65 to 70% community disposition rate, folks going back out into their community. Our focus is to keep folks safe, but also to have the least restrictive environment for them. We don't want to keep them longer than we have to. So we'll go ahead, next slide. You can go back to this one.
All right. Okay, so now a little bit more details about each one of the programs. As we mentioned, urgent care, it is our walk-in center. It's what we often call the front door. That center will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Patients will be met by a multidisciplinary team. You'll see those circles there they will be seen by a behavioral health medical practitioner or an MD. They'll be able to be seen by licensed therapists, licensed case managers, peers, et cetera, as techs. And so we have a multidisciplinary team that comes on that makes sure that those individuals' needs are being met immediately, and again, getting back out to the community in a fast and safe way.
So again, I just touch a little bit more on the 23-hour observation and the first responder entrance. The individual that's going to be taking the first step and role when that individual comes in is going to be our peer support. Peer supports are incredibly valuable to us and to the community in that they've already experienced this continuum. They may have already utilized crisis services, psychiatric services, so they understand what's about to happen with this individual. They're going to thank them for coming in that day, whether they are brought in voluntarily or not. We're still going to say thank you for coming in and focusing on their own behavioral health. All of our techs and all of our staff have handcuff keys. So we're going to be the ones that are unlocking those handcuffs and handing it back to the law enforcement officers. The reason for that is we want to make sure that individuals understand we're there to serve them, that we're not the police. And we want to get them in and served as quickly as possible. Again, we take custody of those individuals in under 5 minutes. There are times when those times might go up. That's an opportunity for us to meet with the police, the sergeants or the chief and say, what's going on? Why is it taking a little bit longer? We've not had any situation where we haven't been able to resolve a challenge with law enforcement. They are our number one customer next to the patients that we serve. And we do not ever turn anyone away. So it's really important. We're going to be licensed for 32 beds or 32 chairs. And there are going to be times when all 32 of those chairs are full. And we're going to have chairs in a back room. And if we have number 33, number 40, we're going to roll another chair in there. And we're going to tell law enforcement, thank you very much for coming and bringing this individual to us. We're going to go ahead and take custody and y'all can go. Our team is consistently from the point of contact with an individual planning the discharge. We're not waiting until the last minute. We're taking every moment we have to get collateral information, collaborate with natural supports in the community to ensure that the individual is discharged to an appropriate, safe placement, not only for themselves, but for the community. So we're going to go through and we're going to try and discharge as many people as we can to stay as close to that 32 chair as we possibly can. The front door or the walk-in up front, we may close that to the public. and say, we're full, the inn is full. It's really important for everyone to know that at no point do we ever tell law enforcement or first responders the inn is full. We continue to accept no matter what.
Not only do we accept, but there also is no behavioral health kind of presentation that is too acute for us, or where we would say we're not taking this individual because they are too psychiatric or too acute for this facility. We would always say yes. We will always take the patient in.
23-hour observation is a recliner model. We're going to bring folks in. They're going to get a shower. We're going to wand them first, make sure that they have nothing, no weapons on them. We're going to get them a shower, get them changed into scrubs so that there's nothing they can hurt themselves with. We're going to get them into a recliner. We're probably going to give them something to eat and something to drink. Folks get hungry and thirsty. We want to make sure we have that taken care of so they can listen, hear, and engage with our team. Doc is going to come in, going to do the psychiatric evaluation, and then the nurse is going to do theirs. The case management's going to do theirs, and so on. And we're going to start medication as quickly as we possibly can. In our facilities in Arizona, last year, we served roughly 30,000 people between Phoenix and Tucson. And I can tell you of the times that we've been that busy, where we've shut the front door in our 2 facilities 5 times in the last 2 years. And so you think about that, it's a constant movement. The most important thing for us is to make sure we've got somewhere safe. So we're going to be really collaborating with the rest of the community to find out where can we discharge someone to safely. We have about a 60 to 70% conversion rate from involuntary to voluntary. So there are times folks are coming into our 23 observation. They do not want to be there. They've been brought in involuntarily. And through the conversation, through the connection with our team and talking very calmly, transparently with them about what we're trying to do for them, 60 to 70% of those folks actually make the decision that they're choosing to be there voluntarily. So we don't have to go through an involuntary process. That also saves all kinds of money and time and effort, but it also gives the individual some power in their own care. And that is a 23-hour length of stay. At a certain point, if we decide, gosh, we're not going to be able to get this person stabilized enough, that's who we're going to transfer into our inpatient beds so we can continue that stabilization with them. So then we have our CSUs, again, similar cadre of multidisciplinary teams. And the length of stay for the voluntary side is 3 to 5 days. It says 3 to 4, but there are times that we're going to have someone with us for 5 days. That does not mean that on day 5, we open the door and push them out. If they're not ready and we can utilize another day or 2, we're going to take another day or 2. But if we can also get them out on the flip side in 2 days, we're going to go ahead and do that as well. It's not a hard and fast. It's our basic understanding.
And then lastly, our post-acute transitions program, as mentioned, once someone is ready for discharge, we are able to continue to provide services for them. We know that there are times where people are being discharged but can't be seen by their outpatient provider for a week or 2 weeks or something along those lines. We'll continue to provide care and we'll continue to provide services, groups, medication management, et cetera, to those individuals so that there is some continuity of care within services and they're not left without providing support or help. That was a very quick overview of the services. We'll let Ryan give you a preview of the building and talk a little bit more about that specifically.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Curry, and I'm a project manager with the implementation team Connections. I'm looking to share my screen here. If we could stop this current presentation. Thank you.
Raise up the mic.
All right. I have the pleasure today of showing some future 3D renderings that we're working hard to make reality in our Kirkland Crisis Receiving Center. So just a quick overview of what the facility looks like today. This is just an exterior photo of our 3-story facility that we're working on renovating to open our Crisis Receiving Center. I'm gonna jump ahead here. Just some more photos of what it looks like currently, but want to show you really what it's going to look like when we do open the doors. We talked a lot about that urgent care front door model. This is what you can expect walking in the front door, to be greeted by one of our team members and to begin your recovery process with us. It's as they mentioned, it's open to anybody in the public to walk in if they feel like they are needing service from us, and we are gladly going to be there to receive them and help them through the process. I'm going to jump ahead here and just take a look a little bit more in depth at our 23-hour recliner-based model. You can see this is where those patients will come in and have their own chair. We have rooms in the back for calm rooms, quiet rooms if they need to get off the milieu for a minute to take a breath or do whatever they need to do to help with their recovery process. This is really the meat and potatoes of our facility and where most of the stabilization is going to occur, as my coworkers have mentioned. Jumping ahead here, this is a better look at our crisis stabilization units, our inpatient facilities. This is the day room you're seeing here, with some private rooms where the patients will sleep at night in the back, but really we encourage them to be out in the milieu, interacting with our providers, interacting with other patients in the facility to really help with that recovery process. And we found that that works best, and that's where they spend most of their time. So it's a warm, welcoming, comfortable environment for them that we designed to hopefully, or not hopefully, will look like this in the near future. Lastly, here is just another rendering that we're working on, a spot for our staff to step away when they need to, a space that we designed that will help with them, because you know, this is a spot where they can recover to and kind of just recharge before stepping back out and continuing to help our patients continue their process. That's all I have for you today. I appreciate you walking through this with us, and we're really, really excited about what it's going to bring to the community. And thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'm waiting to see. She said she had something else.
Any questions?
Okay, yep, questions, council? Yes, Councilmember Cassover.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just can't tell you how excited I am to welcome you here. This is something we've dreamed of for quite some time, and to see it come to reality is just super exciting. I sit on the board of the North Urban Human Services Alliance, which is an alliance of human service providers across the north part of King County. And I'm not sure whether you are yet connected with them, and I want to make sure that that happens. So maybe I can get a card from each of you and be sending you some emails about when we meet. It's virtual meetings, and so you can do it on Zoom from Arizona or wherever you are, and start to get to know some of the other agencies in our part of King County. And I'm hoping that would be of help and use to you.
Absolutely. We would love to.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Fairtie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. We really do need a facility like this in the north part of the county. Glad you're going to be able to provide these services. My question is, coming out of the pandemic, we've heard a lot about the youth mental health care crisis. And is this facility open to youth as well? That is, say, people who aren't 18 yet?
This facility will not be open to youth. It is 18 and older. But if somebody does come to our facility and they are under the age of 18, we would help them to try to figure out the next spot for them, although we aren't that place for continued care or treatment.
Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm also very excited to see you join us here in the county. I have a question about payment and money, and so how it works for someone who needs services. And the reason I ask is a concern is that some of the people who are in most need of service have the least ability to pay.
Correct. And so a lot of the funding and a lot of the payment comes from Medicaid. So if we have an individual that arrives and they have no insurance, we're going to run them through a Medicaid eligibility. If they qualify for that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to help them fill out a Medicaid application, submit that, and be able to get them on state funded services and Medicaid services. That opens up an array of benefits for that individual that they can then continue making sure that they've got the basic needs in their life met. They're going to be able to have case management, outpatient services. There's some residential and housing that can be connected with that. And then obviously they'd be able to take advantage of our services. We're also never going to say no if somebody doesn't have insurance. We're going to serve whether somebody has the ability to pay or not. We also have different contracts with commercial insurance payers. We'll bill through commercial insurance, very similar to what you would do if you went into the hospital to receive medical care.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Riddle, then Councilmember Lebo.
Yeah, I know obviously a lot of our folks that might be going into your system in crisis might be coming from a place of homelessness. Are you connecting with those housing providers for folks who would be able to re-enter into the community, and have you started making those connections yet?
Yes, ma'am. We have spent the last few months actually spending quite a bit of time kind of boots on the ground, Heather, myself, and Ryan, meeting with the various different providers, whether that's hospital systems, housing providers, outpatient providers, inpatient providers, law enforcement, fire, HopeLink, which is a transportation agency and service provider. So we are open to meeting with anyone and everyone to kind of get our name out there and build those gaps. We recognize that we are one part of the system. And so if there are contacts that you have, I'm happy to give my card, as mentioned before, to make those connections, but we have met with a few of the providers in the area.
Thank you. I would love your card. And also, I know that the Accountable Community of Health, Healthier Here for King County, is working on a coordination hub between behavioral health medical providers and other folks. And so that's something that'll be rolled out in the next 5 years or so. So I'd love to get you connected with that and get into that system as one of the providers. So if I can have a card, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. We'd love that.
Councilmember Lebo.
I really appreciate what you're doing, both in Arizona and coming here to North King County. It's amazing that you have taken this approach, and I was really excited to see sort of your triage approach, and that is trying to help them with sort of the least effort, but also recognize that individuals need more help than they may at first encounter, or you understand as you talk to them, you learn more. And so that holistic approach that you're taking to it is really exciting, and I'm so glad to see you doing that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, quick thing, when Phil first mentioned you guys, he was kind of gushing over you, how great you were. And if this was the presentation you saw, then yeah, they're pretty good at it, I'll tell you. This wasn't your first rodeo, I could tell that, but seriously, we need this to work. We really, the citizens of the world need this to work, but citizens of King County and North King County. And I think a lot of people are watching us. A lot of our North King County partners all put this together. Our chief's very excited about it. I think it's a great thing to offer. We have a citizen here who has views about things, which he's not wrong. We have a lot of problems, but we have to have somewhere to start. Unfortunately, we should have started this 30 years ago, but we're doing it now, and I will do whatever we can do to support you. And I'm really excited. And just the way, I wish you had an office out here after some of these meetings. I could use you, but probably won't do that. But I really appreciate it. So, but no, the council will get a hold of you. I know Phil's got good contacts in the chief, and just good luck. I hope it all works. Thank you very much. You have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Good job, by the way. That was good. Okay, we're going to move on to a public hearing. Public hearing on ordinance 23-1275, renewing interim development regulations as authorized by the Growth Management Act related to indoor emergency shelters and housing, and indoor emergency shelters and housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing. I take this as would be our city administrator, Phil.
It is. Thank you, Mayor. So as you mentioned, council is considering ordinance 23-1275, renewing the interim development regulations that were set through ordinance 1227 back in September of 2021. Council has previously held 4 public hearings on this matter, and tonight would be the 5th public hearing prior to deliberating ordinance 23-1275. Under the Growth Management Act, interim regulations may be in effect for 6 months and renewed for 1 or more 6-month periods. The recommendation from the administration is renewal of the interim regulations while the city is waiting for the necessary guidance from the state and data that could affect the unit numbers, the locations, the reasonable intensity, spacing, and occupancy requirements. Just to note, as you mentioned in the introduction, the interim regulations also permit emergency housing and shelters in the commercial corridor zone. This would allow for permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and sheltering within the commercial corridor zone. And that's the only zone within the city where those would be allowed, was required by the state laws. You identify one zone within your municipality that allows that. So that is what is before you tonight to renew these. We're hoping that within the next 6 months, we get the numbers so that we can adopt these permanently as required by state law. Any questions for me?
Council, any questions? Okay. We don't really allow.
Point of order, I signed up on the list to speak.
Okay, well, when I'll open the, I'll open up the public hearing and then you'll come up here, okay? So just give me 1 second, okay? Council, do you have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Cassover.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Administrator Hill, if I remember correctly, as I reviewed the ordinance today, the fact that this does not affect some of the group homes that we already have in Lake Forest Park. Is that correct? They can still be in some of the areas where they currently are. And if other group homes wanted to open, that would still be okay?
You are correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Phil? Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing on ordinance 23-1275. I would take it that Nigel is our first speaker.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah, I won't take 3 minutes. I don't need it. But I discovered today, it was kind of interesting that that Inslee has apparently spent $143 million on the homeless issue, you know, trying to get people out of the state right away and out of roads and everything like that. And they've only housed like under 1,000 people. And now he says he's broke and he's looking for more money. So you got the state paying all these millions of dollars, you know, it's just incredible. It's just incredible. And that group that left just now, they tell you, oh, it's Medicare. Well, wait a minute, what are their operating costs for all their people and who built the building and whose land is it on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I guess the cost doesn't matter to any of you, really. I mean, those are basic questions you need to know in order to make a good decision. If you're a manager of any business, you need to know what the cost is. And here you got Inslee saying he's broke. And if the legislature doesn't give him any more money, well, the people in the tents are going to stay in the right of way. That's disgusting. I think that's all I needed to say. I just want to cover that. And I don't know how many of you are aware that that was in the news today. $143 million. $55 million to King County. $77 million paid by the city of Seattle. When the hell does it end? And the taxpayers are the ones who take the brunt of this.
Okay, seeing anybody on the list, anybody out here, would anybody like to speak? Okay, seeing none, is there anybody online that would like to speak at this time?
If you wish to address the council, please use the raise hand function. Doesn't look like it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then at this time, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 23-1275. Discussion, direction, and possible action. On ordinance 23-1275, would anybody like to introduce this or move this forward?
I'll move ordinance number 23-1275, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington, renewing interim development regulations as authorized by the Growth Management Act relating to indoor emergency shelters and housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing, providing for the severability and providing an effective date.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Council, any discussions or questions? Okay, I think we talked about it. Seeing none. Yes.
Well,
Councilmember
I,
Castleberry.
yeah, I'd just like to make a statement in support of our continued passing of this interim ordinance and look forward to some of the data that we know will be coming soon about the piece of responsibility that Lake Forest Park will have in providing these services. And I'd just like to make a further statement, given some of the things we've heard today, about the fact that the housing crisis is nationwide. It is absolutely due to failed housing policies on the part of national and state governments going back 60 or 70 years in the United States of America. And I'm going to say that as somebody who grew up in Europe, where government provided housing, workforce housing is everywhere and used by large percentage of populations in many European countries. And that just has not happened in this country, and it was badly needed. But the housing that was built in Europe was built before and after World War II. It's still there. It's still used as workforce housing with subsidies by the government, and it's effective. And I just am so sad that we don't have that kind of housing in this country, and that we are in such dire straits and so short of places, healthy places for people to live. So while my time on the council is short, I will be out there in the community supporting the efforts to build more housing as time goes on. And I hope my colleagues will take this to heart and also support just the creation of more housing wherever, however we can, so that everybody who needs a roof over their heads and is willing to work and raise a family and wants to raise a family has a good, healthy place to do that.
Yes, Councilmember Frutine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to endorse Councilmember Cassover's position. I'm fully in support of this motion. And one of the things that I cannot let pass is the fact that, yes, there is a drug fentanyl problem in this community. However, solving that entirely would not solve the homelessness problem entirely either. So the issue is complex. And we do what we can. We basically pick at the parts that need addressing. We hope that basically the solutions get us closer to what we want. But the fact is that by completely focusing on one problem and not looking at the others is not the right way to solve this. And I love this approach that the Connections was showing us earlier, is the fact that basically treating the person as a whole, as Councilmember Lebo was talking about, is the proper way to go. And so I'm fully in support of this motion.
Thank you. Yes. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. It's been moved in second. All those in favor of ordinance 23-1275, renewing interim development regulations relating to emergency shelter and housing, transitional housing and permanent supportive housing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Thank you, council. Just one quick thing, there's the environment, housing, drugs, the world. We are just all lucky to be when we're finally realizing that we have to take the brakes, put the brakes on all of it and try turning it, going the other direction. It's a big job on all of us, and we'll do our best. And like you said, Tracy, we can only do so much here and there, but we seem to be the generation right now that is learning that we've made a lot of mistakes and we need to take a different direction. So hopefully we can do as much as we possibly can. So with that, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion on the consent calendars? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Thank you, council. Okay, ordinance and resolution for introduction and referral, resolution 23-1913, authorizing the mayor to sign amendment to number one to professional service agreement with AG Agreement AG 23-023 with Aspect Consulting LLC for NPDES Municipal Stormwater Program Support. And live and in person tonight, we have Andy. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Nice to see you all again.
Yes.
It's been a while. Yeah, I'm here to talk to you or seek your authorization to amend this contract with Aspect Consulting. It's not usually fun to talk about contract amendments, but this one has a happier origin story, which is that so we executed this contract in May, and shortly thereafter, the Department of Ecology announced or confirmed a new funding stream for permittees under the Municipal Stormwater Permitting Program. So this is $130,000 offered in the form of a non-competitive grant. They call it the capacity grant that can only be used on NPDES permit compliance work. So we've been thinking of opportunities, for how we're going to take advantage of that. And this amendment is our idea for a little under $40,000 worth of that amount. And so we have two main bodies of work that we're seeking to have Aspect support with. First is alleviating a capacity constraint that staff are facing in complying with one of the permits education and outreach requirements. It's a behavior change program. I'm happy to explain to you what that program is all about, but we have a staff member who's kind of overburdened at the moment, and there's an opportunity here to to get this required work done using a contracted resource. So that's half of the scope of what we're requesting to do, and then the other half is additional support for the inspections that Aspect is going to be performing for the new source control program for businesses. So what we have an opportunity to do here is leverage the so there was an existing grant, King County Hazardous Waste program grant that was used to purchase a pallet of spill kits that we'd like to have Aspects help in just supplying to these business owners as part of these inspections. So we have to do about 24 this year and next year. And the way it would work is that they would retrieve some of these from City Hall as they undertake their inspections and provide them to the business owner. Spill kits are one of the things, spill kits and spill plans are one of these best management practices that all of these businesses are going to be required to have. And so we expect a lot of these business owners will be introducing them to the concepts of stormwater management and proper source control. So it's a tangible olive branch we can offer them to kind of validate what we're trying to impress upon them through things like the letters we're sending them in the website. We're going to be publishing that we're here to help them. We're a partner in this. We're not just here to be kind of a heavy-handed regulatory stick. So yeah, it seemed like a good opportunity to provide some real help to the businesses that will be newly regulated. So that's the other half of the additional scope. So
Do you have
happy to
any
answer any
questions for Andy
questions.
at this time? Yes, Councilmember Lebo, then Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation and discussion. I'm trying to follow the money. So there's $130,000 capacity grant, and this resolution is for about $38,000. Am I following that correctly?
Yes,
So what happens to the other 92,000?
haven't programmed it yet, to be honest.
Okay, good answer. Thank you.
Councilmember Riddle.
And this is in addition to the current contract. So this isn't replacing money we have in the contract that would release it for other uses. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that for me?
This doesn't replace obligated funds that we currently have for this work to be released to other uses. This is an addition to it, has to be added to it, correct?
That's right, yes.
Okay, just clarifying that. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Freitai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, sorry, Director Silva for basically a great report. You might recall in the contract, the original contract, there were these different tasks, 6 of them, and a lot of them had not budgeted at this time. I was trying to map what you were saying onto those not budgeted, are they mappable or are they completely different?
When you say are they mappable, do you mean, are they,
Or were they listed?
Is it related to this work?
Right.
No, I wish I had the contract scope open in front of me, because I don't think so. I don't think that
Okay.
either of these two bodies of work were contemplated as work we might perform had we more available budget.
Then I will stop looking for them. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Cassover.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Sylvia. I think it's kind of apropos that this came before us on the same day that we read the proclamation about Puget Sound starting here, because this is all about Puget Sound, right? And
Yes.
I'm very pleased to see that we can add some public education with these funds, as well as education of the business owners, and look forward to that. So I guess one of my questions would be about timing here. What is the time frame you're working with on needing our approval of this contract amendment? Do you have to write an application for this money, or is this money already allocated and just needs this policy kind of approval to go ahead? Tell me about that, please.
So this authorization we're seeking is just for the contract with Aspect, just to authorize the additional scope and budget. And then as for the, I think what you're referring to with the timeframe for the additional funding, that is a grant. So you apply for it, the applications close, I think, on the 30th this month. And you know that it's that the eligible timeframe, I think, runs like June to June. So, you know, you can, any expense that would have been incurred from June of this year, I think, through June of next year is eligible. And it's a pretty straightforward application process. I mean, you basically, you know, you raise your hand and say, yes, I'd like this money, please. And then they send you a grant agreement.
That's nice.
Yeah, where do we get
not
one of those?
competitive. It's a very, you know, kind of be foolish not to apply for it. Because that's all that's really required.
Okay, so I guess my question really is, do you need the council's approval of this contract in order to be able to be, in order to be eligible to apply for the money?
No.
Okay, then we can go through the normal three-touch process without hanging you up in any way.
Yes, I'd say, you know, some of these, the spill kit distribution piece of this, that's tied to the source control program inspections. We have to have the first couple dozen of those done by the end of the year. So it's, you know, I mean, we still have time. I think we'll still have time, even if this is approved next month. It always helps to have more time for that, but it's,
You know, does anybody have any concern of moving this at this time?
Yeah, I guess that's my question. Colleagues, would you entertain a motion to put aside the three-touch rule for this particular contract amendment? Okay, then I would like to move that we, I can't remember the proper terminology. Suspend, thank you. Suspend the three-touch rule in order to take a vote on this tonight.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second to remove the three-touch rule on ordinance 23-1913. Do I receive any discussion? I think John has something.
Well, it's not about, I do have a question, but it's not about suspending the
Okay.
three-touch rule.
Okay, all those in favor of suspending the three-touch rule, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimous, thank you. And Councilmember Lebo.
Well, should we move first, John,
We
or
have a
no,
question
or you want to
first,
talk first?
I'll just ask the question first and then I think we can move. I just want to come back a moment for the money. The $38,000, is that, it's a reimbursable, is that right?
yes.
And so is there any concern about being reimbursed?
No, I mean, in the time that I've worked with this grant, it's always been a very easy process.
Okay,
to,
so the 130,000 is available for Lake Forest Park, or is it, you have to do something?
we'll have to execute the agreement, first, in order to be able to submit for,
Okay.
These expenses for reimbursement.
Right.
But
But they're gonna give us $130,000 as part of this agreement, which is reimbursable. Okay, I'm good.
All right, then I'll go ahead and move. Let me just get this ordinance number up.
I can wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'll wait until after you move it.
okay.
Sorry, my laptop is not being useful here. Okay, yeah, thanks. I'd like to move resolution 23-1913, authorizing the mayor to sign amendment number 1 to professional services agreement AG 23-023 with Aspect Consulting LLC for NPDES Municipal Stormwater Program support.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in the second. Do we have any discussion, Larry?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate that you finding this pot of money. That often we gripe about the state giving us these unfunded mandates. So for you to find some funding to help businesses implement this with the spill kits, that's appreciated.
Of course.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Fairtie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, thank you, Director Sylvie, for this wonderful find. The other, as Councilmember Leva was talking about, there's another 92,000 left in this pot of money. Will you be coming back with amendments, further amendments to try to address some of those non-budgeted issues in the tasks?
Potentially, sure. We haven't made any decisions yet as to what's the best use of that. These were our kind of most attractive opportunities. So taking these first.
As you know, I'm a big fan of the GIS component that isn't funded yet. So just wanted to put that in there. Thank you
both. Yeah, and that'll be a top vote getter for me.
Okay. See no other discussion. All those in favor of resolution 23-1913, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passed unanimously. Thank you, council, for moving that. Thank you, Andy, very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
have a great night. Okay, from there, we're going to move on and ordinance and resolution for action. First up is resolution 23-1915, amending the 2023 user fees related to the tree permits and retraining walls. Public Works Director, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I will be asking for action on 23-1915. Since the 2023 user fee schedule became effective in January, the city has made amendments to the tree code related to tree permits in the right-of-way corridors and added a new section to the code related to retaining walls. The user fees need to be amended to reflect those changes to the code. The city reviews the user fee schedules annually during biannual or mid-by budget proceedings and requests input from all departments. This year, the municipal code was amended to cover tree permits in the right of ways and added a new section related to retaining walls, resulting in the addition of 2 applications. Since there are costs associated with these permits, it's appropriate that the user fees be amended to account for those costs. The new fees highlighted on the 2023 user fee schedule under land use and building fees. The right of way corridor permit, project permit for trees includes a fee of $70.50 per tree plus consultant and staff review costs. And the corridor retaining wall permit is based on evaluation of the improvements plus consultant and staff review time. So again, tonight I'm looking for again action to approve those 2 additional budget items in the fee schedule.
Questions? Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
Question, just to clarify, for the right-of-way corridor tree project tree permit, that's a really long title. The per tree is based off of the 6-inch diameter trees and larger that would be covered under our tree code. Is that correct?
That is based on the existing tree permit costs that we have.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So we have taken schedule of values that we currently have in the fee schedule and just applied it slightly differently.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to us. I support, since we've amended the municipal code, I support adding these on. A comment that I want to make, and we've had an email correspondence about this, is looking through the user fee schedule on the website, there are parts of it that I find confusing, sort of as a layperson. And so I'd like to see us, we can make this change now, but especially as we're approaching the mid-biennium amendments, let's find ways to make the website a bit more user-friendly, a bit more clear to the public. For instance, if there's administrative fees, make sure those are listed in the fee schedule, just so that it's clear when someone's applying for this sort of permit, retaining wall permit, building permit, that it's clear what it is that they'll be paying.
Absolutely understood.
Okay, anybody like to move this?
I believe we would need to suspend the three-touch rules. This is our first presentation. If council is interested in moving this tonight, I will move to suspend the three-touch rule for resolution number 23-1915 for means of expediency.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second to remove the three-touch rule on for resolution 23-1915. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, pass unanimously. Moving on.
I'll move resolution 23-1915, amending the 2023 user fees related to tree permits and retaining walls.
Second.
It's moved in second. Do I have any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of resolution 23-1915, amending the 2023 user fees related to the tree permit and retaining walls, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, passing unanimous. Thank you, sir. All right, moving along to resolution 23-1916, authorizing the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement with the Northeast King County Regional Public Safety Communication Agency, NORCOM, for dispatching services. You know, so far, chief, everybody's been pretty light on our pocketbook.
Ouch.
Sorry. You've had a real good night tonight.
Yeah. Okay, so before I start, the connections thing, I am so behind and I cannot wait for this to happen. It is incredible and it is a serious need, as everybody has been talking. Great people, so hope everything completely comes out to fruition.
And real quick, congratulations on your two new officers. So
Yes,
thank you.
yes, very much so. So we're going to be talking about the NORCOM ILA for dispatch services. As discussed at the city council last month, the administration sent a letter to NORCOM requesting that they supply public safety dispatching services to the city. For council's consideration tonight is the proposed agreement between the city and NORCOM. Also for council's consideration tonight is the additional service agreement to provide city technical services to implement and maintain the interface to auto tag computer aided dispatch calls with the body cameras, body worn camera videos. Let's see. So I'm going to recap kind of the last presentation, but it's going to be a little bit quicker. So the road so far in the early 2000s, the city of Lake Forest Park entered an agreement with city of Bothell for dispatch and software services. All of Lake Forest Park's data is housed or hosted in Bothell servers, and the systems integration allowed access to police reports, records, and dispatch data calls for officers using mobile and desktop devices. On June 20th of 23, the city of Bothell discontinued providing dispatch services to Lake Forest Park effective October 31st, 2023. Bothell entered into an agreement with NORCOM, which was approved last Tuesday. The city of Lake Forest Park sent a letter of intent to the NORCOM board on August 10th, and on August 11th, the NORCOM governing board voted to approve the city of Lake Forest Park and the police department to join NORCOM. NORCOM is a regional dispatch center. In 2022, NORCOM dispatched approximately 300,000 calls for 6 police agencies and 13 fire EMS agencies, including our own Shoreline North Shore Fire EMS. NORCOM employs 62 telecommunicators and is overseen by a governing board, which Shoreline Fire is a principal member, and myself or designee would participate in the police board as a principal member. NORCOM offers efficiencies from the size of operations, including 24/7, 365 technology support, as well as dispatch services for 3 of our 5 racer cities, Kirkland, Bothell, and our city. The agreement with NORCOM will provide an expansion of NORCOM services to Lake Forest Park to include public safety, police, dispatch services. In doing so, all callers from Lake Forest Park will be handled by one dispatch service. As for Lake Forest Park, we have limited alternatives for dispatch services. Redmond and Issaquah dispatch agencies are options, but they use a different software system, which would involve high costs for conversion and would need to add additional dispatch staff. Additionally, the city could consider returning to self-dispatching, but this approach proves to be very financially prohibited. NORCOM has been preparing for the potential inclusion of Bothell and Lake Forest Park Police Departments. They provided an initial service cost estimate annually of $463,500, not including the expenses related to the data conversion and system migration. As we've diligently readied ourselves for this transition in recent months, we find ourselves confronting certain challenges. These include additional expenses and time constraints associated with data conversion, which are currently being worked on. Additionally, we are addressing the matters of pertaining to the management of historical data and records, as well as policy changes specifically related to police and records procedures. And we're also actively engaged in training staff to ensure smooth and successful transition. Bothell and Lake Forest Park are scheduled to transition to NORCOM on November 1st of this year. The city has valued the partnership with Bothell over the last 20 years and intends to continue their collaboration through NORCOM for police services by being on the same radio channel. We also share the same radio channel, or we will, with Mercer Island. Officers on the new system will change the way they use dispatch and interact with mobile data devices. On September 5th, I, along with City Administrator Hill and Director Vaughn, had a meeting with NORCOM's Executive Director and Finance team. With the assistance of our City Attorney, we successfully finalized the interlocal agreement. Notably, we included additional language in the ILA to accommodate a true-up provision in cases where estimated costs were different expectations. This provision would be triggered if there was a 10% differential from the initial estimate. As NORCOM works off of a 8-quarter period, 2 years, this will be looked at in the very latest of 25, but most likely in 26. It's important to note, and I just found this out last week, that NORCOM has a dedicated staff for handling public disclosure requests. So given that our police data will reside on their servers, NORCOM can take on the responsibility of managing these requests. This task is generally handled by our police records staff and our own city records management specialist, Thompson. This transition is expected to alleviate some of the workload and provide valuable assistance in redacting requested information. Overall, choosing NORCOM is considered the most prudent and financially responsible solution for Lake Forest Park's dispatch needs. The urgency of the matter requires prompt action and approval to ensure a smooth transition to NORCOM services. So we are asking to approve Resolution 23-1916, authorizing the mayor to sign the City of Lake Forest Park and NORCOM Principal Service Agreement effective November 1st, 2023, and approve Resolution 23-1917, authorizing the mayor to sign the Information Technology Additional Service Agreement by and between Lake Forest Park Police Department and NORCOM. And since this is the second touch, I kindly request that you suspend the usual 3-touch rule and grant approval this evening. Our team has been tirelessly collaborating with NORCOM and Bothell over the last several weeks and conducting basically 3 to 4 meetings a week to ensure seamless transition with our officers, records, and dispatch staff. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Yes, Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you, Chief Harden, for the presentation. Can you help me understand a little more of the, call it trigger or the
True up.
true up? Thank
Trigger,
you. It's
true
getting-
up.
It's getting late for me.
I will do my best, and director, because everybody's a director tonight, it sounds like. The city administrator Hill, if you want to jump in here just to add for clarity, but basically once we have 2 years of NORCOM data, all of our progress has been accounted for. And they look at how much that actual cost would be based on those numbers. And our estimate for the first 2 years that we're using, the 463 or 462,500, if there's a 10% differential, then they'll give us a reimbursement. If we happen to be higher, then we're going to have to look at how that expense will take place over time. So it's basically, I think, giving us the ability to not get taken advantage of these next 2 years. But we won't really truly know what that number is going to be until NORCOM has done the work on the data. So Phil, if you want.
Yeah, no, I would just echo that. I mean, Chief Harden's biggest concern was that these calls are overstated because they measure their call volume differently than Bothell Dispatch does. And there's a concern that we are being overcharged in these first 2 years. So this allows us to true up, and there's no 30, 60, or even 6-month payback either way. I think we put in there as a year or two to actually true that up. So there's no real instantaneous harm to one entity or the other, mostly protecting the smaller one. Just to really figure out, once we have the data with NORCOM, if those initial estimates were correct.
So just to follow up, so do we pay in advance and then we true up, or do they expense and then we pay?
I believe it's they expense and we pay, and I think it's quarterly. We've been doing that with Bothell, and I believe that's what we do with NORCOM. So we're going to go off of the assumption of the 463 for the next 2 years, and we pay quarterly as time goes on.
But then thereafter, it'll be consistent with what the actuals are?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Tony.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief Harden, for the presentation. And as we were discussing at the last presentation, this represents a significant increase in our dispatch service costs. And just to remind everyone then, this is sort of that we had a great deal for quite some time, and that great deal kind of came to a close. And now we're paying what's effectively the true cost of dispatch services.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yes, Councilmember Ryan.
Just to clarify, I've been hearing so many numbers tonight. So the 463, 560 is the estimate annually. Of course, we've got a prorated for the rest of this year. Next year will be that full cost.
That is correct.
What we would be approving here would be approving the remainder of this year plus the cost for next year, though we don't quite have that worked out in the budget yet, and we'll get that from Finance Director soon.
Absolutely.
We have budget available still from our current budget that could offset this. Do you know what that exact, I see some numbers here, but I want to make sure I understand the exact.
I don't have the exact numbers. I just paid the third quarter bill for Bothell Communications actually yesterday.
Okay.
I didn't pay it yet, or you haven't paid it yet. It's not in consent yet, but basically that has covered up till the end of August. So no, I'm sorry, October. So we're going to be paying September and October, 2 months of the fourth quarter, if I have that right. Or am I off a month?
1 month.
I'm off by a month. We're going to be paying for October for the fourth quarter for Bothell Dispatch. Then November and December, we're going to pay NORCOM those costs. So whatever the 1/3 amount is, the 2/3 would be going to NORCOM. If that
Okay.
math, we're not supposed to do math here,
No,
but
but just kind of that's how you, so that's how we would be dividing it.
Yes.
So thank you for that. It just kind of helps me understand, and then what we have allocated, and we'll be hearing more from you and Finance Director, of course.
Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this. And I agree that this, of the options we have available, this is the most prudent of them. One benefit that I do like is it brings parity to landlines and cell phones. I'm one of the growing number of houses that doesn't have a landline. And so it's nice to know that when I call, or if I need to call on 911, that it won't bounce between NORCOM and another dispatch agency. So that's
That is
another
correct.
benefit.
Go, people, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again, Chief, for handling this. I know this came as a bit of a surprise.
it's one
The
other
department
thing.
and rather a speedy one. And so I really commend you for the work that you have done in a short period of time to get us where we are today. And so I think that as a council, we need to follow your lead and take no more time in approving this for you. And so I would like to move resolution 23-19-16, authorizing the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement with Northeast King County Regional Public Safety Communication Agency for dispatch services.
Maybe suspend the 3-touch.
Oh,
rule
that's
first,
right.
my
We're going
dear.
to do that first,
Yeah.
don't we? All right. So then I'll move suspending the 3-touch rules so we can then move the resolution. Thank you very much, Council Member.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to remove the 3-touch rule from resolution 23-19. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, passes unanimously. Move on. Yes.
And then I will move resolution 23-19-16. I don't think I need to say that all over again, do I?
And 17 together,
No, we're doing them separately, are we?
That's it.
separately?
Yeah.
Separately would be better.
So do you need me to read it all again? No. All right, thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moving the second. Resolution 23-1916 has been moving second. Any other discussion? Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
While I support this and I understand that the pinch that we're in, obviously we prefer to have all of our ducks in a row financially before you move forward on this. So I do look forward to seeing what that impact looks like from finance director sometime soon as we do our mid-biennium review. But I understand that this needs to be done in order to hit that November 1st deadline. So I do support you in this. And like I said, I look forward to understanding what this really means to us on the
Me too.
bottom line. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor of resolution 23-1916, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, pass unanimously. Council, just so you know, you just added about 3 meetings a week to our chief schedule, so thank you.
Should we suspend the three-touch rule for 1917?
Mhm.
I will move to suspend the three-touch rule for resolution 1917.
Second.
And I will move resolution 1917, authorizing the mayor to sign.
We should vote on
We
this.
should vote on it.
Oh, geez, yeah, it's not even past 9. I don't know why I'm doing this.
I'm just finally learning how to do this and you guys are all messing it up. So, yeah. Okay, all those in favor of removing the three-touch rule for resolution 23-1917, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, pass unanimously and back to you.
Okay, I will reiterate. I moved resolution 23-1917, authorizing the mayor to sign the information technology additional services agreement by and between Lake Forest Park, Police Department and NORCOM.
Second,
Second.
there we go. Been moving second. Any other discussion on this? Seeing, oh yes, Councilmember Bertani.
I just wanted to give the chief an opportunity. Did you have a presentation on this one? Since it's
No.
about that auto tag
No,
technology.
it was, no, I mean, I can explain it for the most part, when an officer's recording something on their body worn camera, the data that's captured matches the call that they're on the computer system. And what NORCOM's doing is making sure that interface works at the same time. So when they plug their camera into the docking station, when they're done for the day, and that gets uploaded, it matches the calls. So that's what this is all about. But it's just an addition to, and we felt we needed a resolution to add to it.
All right, thank you.
I want to let council know that November 1st is our goal date. As an emergency, we will switch over to NORCOM if something happens with Bothell dispatchers, because there is that chance that they don't have enough staff and we have this emergency and we'll be switching over. So they're prepared and we're ready to go if that happens. But I just wanted you all to know that.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all those in favor of resolution 23-1917, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, pass unanimously. Thank you, chief. Tracy, we have a little rule around here. If the chief's done talking, don't bring it back up, okay? Hey, Louise, you've been here 2 years. You'd think you would have learned that by. Okay, sorry about that. Thanks, chief. You did a fantastic job. So with that, we're going to move on to ordinance 23-1276, amending the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code to update the titles of city officials. City administrator, welcome. Again.
Thank you. And this one is easy, and I won't ask you to suspend the three-touch rule. This is not time sensitive, but with the retirement of the planning director, this was an opportune moment to realign some things, especially in the planning department. So it's originally titled the Planning and Building Department, Planning and Building Director. For many years, operationally, the building department's actually been under Public Works for many reasons. And there is a lack of synergy that occurs when your building department and your planning department aren't in the same department. They are so inextricably tied together. They need to be having those staff meetings together, and they can have these off meetings with Public Works because they do have some tie-ins there with, as we discussed earlier, sewer laterals, and how those tie in for the houses. But we need that synergy between the planning and the building department and the arborist. And so the idea here was to create what is called a community development department that encompasses all of that. The benefit to that as well is when you're out in the job market, community development director sells a lot better than planning director. So there's a little bit of that in there as well. But it's kind of that next step up. We are a small city, so as a community development director, you're still doing a lot of the day-to-day work and more of the work of a planning director. But for those reasons, that's why I wanted to make a community development director. It did not change the salary schedule. What you'll see when we bring the salary schedule forward is planning director was already underpaid in the market. The pay scale, the new proposed pay scale for the planning director aligns with what we would need for a community development director. So we're right in the mix. So that doesn't change anything. While we were at it, we thought we would clean up the public works department because by our municipal code, it is the Department of Public Services and the Director of Public Services. We haven't technically called it that forever. It's been the Public Works Director in the Public Works Department. So it's just a name change. There will be some operational changes that take place. Currently our building official is doing road right-of-way inspections for the Public Works Department. And this was a need that was from long ago, but the need for our building official far outpaces his ability, just doing that job to then also be doing a job that he's technically, that's not his expertise. And so, we're working with the Public Works Department, and this will be some changes that we'll do over time to shuffle things around and get duties where they make the most sense, where they have the most expertise, the most support, to make sure that everything's going in the ground right, whether it's building or public works, et cetera. So that, wow, my computer really just wants to go home. That's the gist of it. I don't know if you have any questions for me tonight. It doesn't change anything from what the public is going to see. It just operationally is going to make things more efficient within City Hall.
Councilmember Cassover.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Administrator Hill, for bringing this forward. In my past experience of other cities, a community development director also has had the job sometimes of being a little bit of an economic development director too, right. And interacting with potential businesses that might locate in a city or with businesses that are already in the city to, improve the relationships between the city and the business, and I'm thinking obviously of our town center here and the things that might go on in the future. And I'm just wondering whether this change in title, is it your kind of vision that those kinds of relationships between a community services, no, is that what
Community
we're calling
development director.
Community development director, sorry, and the business community might in fact become part of their purview?
So it already was, honestly. Former
okay.
planning director met very often with, say, the owners of the town center, met one-on-one with business owners when they had questions or concerns. I think you remember with the little coffee shop in front of the local 104, Director Bennett worked quite closely with them to help them understand, what they could do where they were and what it would take to, co-locate with another business or maybe do a brick and mortar in there. So it's already part of the job. It kind of comes with it, as well as my position, as well as you are that face for the city to interact with those, and then obviously your mayor and elected officials when they're shopping in the stores in their city. So, but yeah, that already does occur.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And I think maybe the fact that I really wasn't, I was a little bit aware of that, but not maybe the extent of it, speaks to the value of having those quarterly reports from our division heads, because I think we'll learn a lot when we hear those. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember.
And looking through the actual amendments to the code, there is a section there, 208-140, where it talks about duties. And so the duties of the position shall be as follows, and there's a list. Is there any concern of that list not being aligned necessarily with our current vision or what we have actually listed as kind of the duties and expectations in our community development director job advertisements? Or are you okay with?
No, I mean, these are really the overarching. I mean, it says, that this position's in charge of, Title 15 building and construction and environmental protection. Some of that is going to fall to a designee, i.e. your building official. You do become, as the community development director, you are the SEEP official. So this is kind of all of those overarching things, but then we have a lot of the details within the job description, plus other duties as assigned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking more like community development director duties and would that want to be formalized in here in any way? Again, for future councils and future administrations?
No, because I
understand?
think
Okay.
you've got big components. You've got the building code, you've got the environment and subdivision and zoning, which is all encompassing. And then you call out, your SEPA, your SMA, your JMA, that's all called out in there. And so those are the big things. Those are big state requirements that the details and the nuances of the job don't need to be in the municipal code. So we don't have to amend this every time something changes.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with where we were.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I guess we're okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
we're done. Do you want 3 touches? You want us to bring it back on consent at the next time? You can think about it. You don't have to tell me tonight, but.
We have a job.
Pardon me?
We actually are advertising for the job that you want to change the name to, correct?
Oh, yeah, we're already advertising
so
as community
okay.
development director.
Yeah, I think if we are advertising for someone to take the job, we should change the name to match.
You're good at it. Just say remove the 3.
Okay, I'll,
Yeah, just as an aside, we don't get our actual website code updated frequently. So this wouldn't necessarily get updated until our next cycle, which is what, 3 to 6 months out or something.
Matt,
No, that would actually be, we would send it to the code to be updated immediately after tomorrow.
And they do now update it as we go, not on
Pretty
like a
much, yep,
schedule.
yep.
Okay, that's an update to me that I didn't know they did that now.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. So never mind.
we will change it on the website, et cetera, and we've
It'll
already
happen
done
right
it on
away.
the job announcements and job description.
Okay, 3 touch person, take over.
okay, I would like to move that we suspend the 3-touch rule to take care of this business tonight.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favor of removing the 3-touch rule for ordinance 23-1276, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Okay, would anybody like to move? ordinance?
Yes, I'll move ordinance number 23-1276, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington, amending the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code to change the official names of the planning and building director and the director of public services.
second,
Okay, it's been moved in second. Do I see any other thing? Nope. Okay, all those in favor of ordinance 23-1276, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Thank you,
you.
council. And I'm gonna say one quick thing. It took a while, but with this, I think Phil and we have all, and the chief, we have actually officially I guess reorganized the whole entire city. And I mean it, we have referred every single department now. It's been reorganized and changed, and Matt's done a great job, and Jeff and the chief and Phil, and it's kind of exciting because it's a different world now. If only Kim would do her department, we. I got to pick on you sometime. You're the last one left, so. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did change her business, so that's
Yeah,
true.
that's true.
she's covered.
Okay, council discussion action. I don't think we got anything. Other business. Anybody got anything new? Okay, we've got committee reports, council member reports.
Yes, I have a couple.
Yeah, I kind of, you went back 10 pages. I'm a little worried, but. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I've got a few, I'm afraid. North Urban Human Services Alliance. We heard a presentation from the Best Starts for Kids. We've heard a presentation from Metro, which we heard here too, about the new opportunities there. But the real thing that we heard was interesting about diversion services and for youth who are And I learned that there's funding from police departments for these diversion services, and it was the first I knew about it. So I'll have to check in with the chief and understand a little bit more about that. It just so happens that I used to work in a youth diversion program several decades ago. So I was kind of curious to see that they're still going. Growth Management Policy Board, Department of Commerce has grants for the climate change elements in comp plans. There's going to be $30 million every biennium. Our next full update is not due till 2029, but we can get grants to cover the work that we're doing now in preparation for our full comp plan update. So just my colleagues who work with the Planning Commission and the Climate Action Plan, just know that those opportunities are there, and just be sure you're in touch with the city administration about the opportunities to apply for those, because they're not just planning, they also can be used for implementation of plans. So that was an important thing we learned there. Let me see. The PSRC is reaching out to the affordable housing developer community to see what kinds of hurdles are in their way for increasing the numbers of affordable housing developments. So what I like to really call workforce housing developments that are getting built, because we need more than are getting built now, and there are hurdles, and it's very possible that there will be suggestions coming from PSRC that cities like us and our neighboring folks up here in North King County actually look at doing some analysis of the kinds of requirements and permit kind of hurdles that we have to try to move some of these things along a little faster. So just be aware that that may be coming down the pike. Data trends also, travel patterns. Light rail is up to 100% of pre-pandemic, but then of course it's grown since the pandemic. So, you know, that's not really a legitimate number. The ferry is now at 80%. The ferries are now at 80% of pre-pandemic numbers. The buses are at 60% of pre-pandemic numbers. But the commuter rail, which would be the Sounder, I guess, is only at 37% of pre-pandemic levels. So, one of the things they noted is that the patterns have changed, whereas the bulk of the bus ridership used to be in the commuter rush hours, it's now spread out through the middle of the day. So that's interesting. The other interesting data point is that electric vehicle registrations are now, electric vehicle plus hybrids are now 25% of all new vehicle registrations in the state of Washington. Good news, we're one of the safer regions in the country for traffic deaths. Bad news, it's still rising rapidly here. And if you all watch the news, you can see that. It's kind of alarming. The cities with the lowest death rates are Minneapolis and Boston, which I find incredible because I've driven in Boston. It's the scariest place I ever drove in my life. So the growth in population in Seattle is still steady. Seattle sees a third of all the growth in the state. House prices are falling. I guess we all knew that. Let me see. Seashore. Well, we had a very interesting joint meeting at which Councilmember Goldman and I attended, and I got to chair of all of the transportation committees from around the county. So we had presentations from PSRC on what they are doing to support all of the work that's happening to around climate change. And it's pretty extensive. I'm not going to go through all of that, but it was very interesting. And if anybody has any questions, certainly Larry and I can fill you in. Two of the King County Council members joined us, Claudia Palducci and Sarah Perry. they both talked about the fact that we are not on track to meet our 2030 goals when it comes to the markers, when it comes to climate change. The clean air stuff and the amount of the reducing the number of cars on the roads, those kinds of things are still lagging behind where we hoped those changes would be. We had a presentation from King County Metro. They are leading the country in electrification of buses. 100% of their buses will be electric by 2035. There'll be 40 new electric buses arriving in arrived in 2023, and there will be, I don't know, several more in the next few years. I can't quite find that number here, but anyway, that's a big change that is really coming along. And then the last thing here, Metropolitan Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Boy, organics is a big issue now. This new state law mandates restaurants and other commercial entities to use organic disposal, composting. And that's something we probably will have to pay attention to make sure that all of the businesses in Lake Forest Park are in fact in compliance with those new laws. They did some surveys too about food waste and composting across the county. And what they found in a survey of regular residents is that people are very much in support of this, despite the fact that some cities, not us, but other cities don't even have organics pickup at the curbside. So we're doing well on that. So, just feel good about that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Tony.
Oh, shoot.
Oh,
First, go.
Okay, we're doing the Spider-Man thing. Okay, thank you.
In the web.
I guess I'll start with the Planning Commission that Councilmember Furtani and I attended earlier this week in Councilmember Bodie's stead. She's out of town. I just want to highlight the majority of the meeting was around the initial findings for the housing assessment, and that's available online as part of the agenda for those that want to look through it. Just wanted to lift up a couple of pages out of that. One is looking at the age of residents within Lake Forest Park from 2010 to 2021. And interestingly enough, our two areas of ages that we have more population are 20 to 34 and 65 and older. And as I sort of mentioned, this is not really a typical sort of situation. And it really plays to how we have kind of these different fighting needs for housing. You have your folks who may want to age in place, and you have your folks who are starting families, and they're kind of all coming into our community and finding this community as a place to settle. So that presents some interesting challenges that we will be seeing some recommendations, hopefully from them and the Planning Commission, on how they will handle that. The other area that I was really kind of eye-opening is looking at housing affordability. We all know housing is just extraordinarily expensive, but when you really dig down into our specific city, our median household income, as they've determined for this 2023, is around $150,000. Using the 30% of your income to cover your mortgage and your utilities, you would have to make over about $275,000 in order to be able to purchase a median priced house in Lake Forest Park and not be burdened, cost burdened for your housing. And that's just extraordinary, and showing how the house prices and incomes have not met on the same trajectory. And these are some of the challenges of us finding those workforce housing for folks that are certainly not making $275,000 as a household. And the last item I just wanted to kind of lift up tonight is, as we look at how we are supposed to do housing targets for our growth management, those targets are now being assigned by AMI. So we will be getting, I believe, targets for each different AMI so that we carry our share of those workforce and affordable housing. And so emergency housing numbers will be part of that. Permanent supportive housing will be part of that. Plus just new housing that meets that level, whether that be rental or condos or ADUs, cottage housing, whatever it is that satisfies the 0 to 50 to 80%, where we're really not meeting that need of that community. So we're going to look at it more fine-tuned rather than just last time we just had a big number and we had to say that we could meet this big number of units. Now we have to meet units by AMI. So I think that's helping us target and look forward and of where our need is. And so they are refining this. This was a draft. They're going to refine it, come back with some more numbers. So we'll have more coming from the Planning Commission on this. But as a first blush, those are the three things that kind of spoke to me to bring up today. Councilmember Furtani, what was your thoughts from Tuesdays?
Well, thanks, Councilmember Riddle. You did a great job of summarizing it. The only other number I'd add is that we haven't built any new multifamily housing units in the city since 2018. And so part of the issue is if you want to downsize as somebody who's 65 plus, where do you go? Right? There's just really not a whole lot of choices in the city. So something that we need to think about. And one other point from that I got from the meeting was that there's going to be a outreach soon of gathering anecdotal information. So if any of you who are watching us out in the city have a story about your adventures in housing, the folks that are basically doing this, Leland Consulting, will be submitting a survey that will allow you to basically answer a free form.
Yeah. Other meetings I went to, the Healthier Here, the ACH for King County. Medicaid Transformation Project has renewed for another 5 years, and the goal of this has pivoted from where we were for the first 6 years. So everyone's having to pivot across the state, but they're focusing everyone's attention and the funding on creating these communication hubs, so that doctors and patients have this ability to connect with referral doctors and make sure that these connections are made and that folks are not being sort of left out on their own. And so it's a digital hub, it's not a physical hub. So there's a lot of people out there trying to figure out what that looks like, but we've got 5 years to figure it out. It'll be a statewide set of hubs. So I'm really interested in seeing how that will improve communication. It's coming through the Medicaid, but it would be available for all healthcare patients. It's not limited to just that population. I can see your thought process there, Councilmember Passover. So that's something that's really interesting. And when I have more concrete information, I'll bring it up, but I'm glad to see that communication is where they're placing their money. North King County Coalition on Homelessness was earlier this morning. Regional Homelessness Authority was presented us with some more numbers, some concrete numbers. So in the tracking system that they have as of Monday, they have 648 active individuals whose last stable housing was in one of these North King County cities. And they clarified that the funding that they are putting, our funding from the ILA that is going to them is being used for Lake City Partners, the Sophia Way, Hope Link, Friends of Youth, Congregations for the Homelessness, and Mary's Place, who are located in the North King County. So they are continuing to feedback how our funding is helping our community and making sure that it's not going outside of our community. One big hiccup that they have seen in the last year is that the housing vouchers program that was part of sort of the emergency money that came sort of out of COVID and so forth has slipped away. And so while we were having 120 exits to permanent housing in 23, 124 folks exited homelessness into permanent housing in 22. So far this year, we've only seen 25. And it's the challenge of getting those vouchers and finding landlords that will take them. We are seeing an uptick in this last month as new funding and new processes and programs are being made available. But I think it just really goes to show that there's sort of these critical pieces that are very instrumental in allowing people to exit homelessness. That we need to make sure when those programs work, that we make sure that they are continued. And that is all of the funds I went to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the only other thing I need to add is the Climate Action Committee met on last Tuesday, Tuesdays ago. And we actually had guests from the Seattle City Light folks, their senior manager for grid modernization and their external communications officer. They were kind enough to come. And the answer to all of your question out there is yes, the grid can handle everybody getting an EV charger. The SCL is actually adding a bunch of capacity. And the trick is going to be getting the electricity where it's generated to where it's being used. The actual capacity isn't the problem so much it is the transportation, and that's really what they're looking at. The other answer to another question that you may have is no, we can't underground all the utilities, especially electricity, because apparently between our topography and the fact that unreliability comes from whenever you cross the ground barrier. So if you're going from wires down to conduits, you have to basically bring it back up from the ground to your house connection. That adds another element of instability. So that's one of the reasons they don't do that. Plus, it's super expensive, as many of you know. And is community solar a thing? And the answer is yes. There is actually a couple of House bills that passed that allow for basically net metering. So keep an eye out for that. That means that basically it's not so much paying you back as being able to build in capacity to the system. Like for instance, when we have an outage, being able to actually draw on battery supplies in order to supply some of the power. So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Goldman.
Yes, I'll talk about the tree board. First, I do want to acknowledge the untimely death of tree board member Mandy Parker. She'll be missed. She was an important member of the board. We met a couple of weeks ago. We did not have a quorum, and so there was no official action, just informal tree board members who attended provided individual feedback about the right-of-way tree removal permits. I believe we'll be getting that at our September 28th meeting. I'll provide that, again, making it clear it's not official tree board action, it's just individual feedback. Also, the tree inventory is wrapping up. That should be done by next month. And then the tree board will, so we'll get a report from the company, and then the tree board will look at it and they'll start making some recommendations about if we want to change diameters of trees for landmark exceptional trees.
Okay. Let's move on. You have anything? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to remind council, we do have to excuse a couple of council members. So
No, we don't.
We don't have to.
No. Just put them as unexcused. Go ahead. Get it done.
So I'll move to excuse council members French and Bodie from this evening's meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and second to excuse Councilmember Bodie and Deputy Mayor French. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Come on, Monia.
Oh,
Nay.
There you go. Good job. Thank you. Say that passed 4-1, please. Thank you. Mayor stuff, real simple. Went to picnic in the park and family day. I can tell you this, people are very, very excited about the new park. A lot of people ask a lot of questions. We had a poster board. People are excited that they can get on the bandwagon right up front and give their ideas. So that's pretty exciting. On their side of the world, especially at picnic in the park, everybody brings their kids, and all those people want to know why they don't have sidewalks in front of their elementary schools. And then we had a new one this year because I guess the Shoreline School District's getting, parents are requesting that the Lake Forest Park Police Department be able to do drive-throughs of elementary schools or schools not necessary in Lake Forest Park. So it means we would make a cruise up and into Shoreline and go by the schools to just have a police presence. That seems to be a concern right now by parents. Well, you know, there's shootings all the time at schools and everything, and they kind of miss that. So yeah, it was real interesting. And you know, it's kind of funny. You go down there and there's one person especially, she was pretty mad at me that I hadn't got the sidewalks around Brookside yet. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way, but I'm gonna get a group together and we're gonna go do that. But and then the other thing is being mayor is fun because I got to be a target for kids blowing balloon bubbles at me. You know, it was a lot better than dunk tank. And then, you know, I get all kinds of stuff. But now it sounds like I might be doing a video on cooking. I cannot remember what kind of stove do I have right now. Yeah, I got an induction stove and I was talking to some of the climate members and they thought it'd be really neat if the mayor would just do a demonstration cooking on his new fancy stove. So look for that coming out soon. So no, we have the city was great. Corey did a fantastic job. You know, we had camels, all kinds of, it's just been really, it was good, but you know, for all you, it doesn't hurt really to get out there and talk to people down it. Because it's pretty interesting when you're out there like that, they really tell you what they really think about some stuff. And so it's not a bad idea to get out and be around them. So otherwise I've had some time off and it was great. And we'll kick you over to our city administrator. And what would you like to report?
Just that you have a CA report. I sent you a couple of emails. I don't know if you had any questions from those emails last couple of days, just keeping you up to speed on some ongoings in between, but unless there are questions for me, I have nothing else to report tonight.
I do not see any questions, so I'm going to do this officially. We're going to adjourn before 9 o'clock. Thank you, council. Right at 9. Well, it says 9 right there. I did it.